World War II strikes America. Pulled into war, the US must use its industrial might to create a war machine that can fight on two fronts. By doing so, it sets itself on the road to becoming a superpower. America prepares for war. The Great Depression of the 1930s is over. The coming of war has pushed American industry into overdrive. In 1941, it joins the Allies in the struggle against the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan. Now, every weapon, ration and medical supply is mass-produced on a scale never seen before in human history.
Sometimes it takes a terrific challenge and a horrific threat to the Republic to discover how good you can be.
America's entry into war begins with treachery. December 7th, 1941. 320 kilometers north of Hawaii, the most advanced Japanese fighters of their day head towards the American fleet at Pearl Harbor.
The Japanese Zero was a better fighter than anything the Americans had produced at that time.
The Japanese Zero can fly more than 3,200 kilometers without refueling, making it perfect for a surprise attack.
When Pearl Harbor was attacked, it was one of the most stunning moments in American history.
183 Japanese bombers and fighters are heading straight for Hawaii. Another 170 follow right behind. Japan has built an empire across Korea, Manchuria, and Hong Kong. It wants the whole Pacific Ocean. But the US fleet in Pearl Harbor stands in its way. 50 kilometers north of Pearl Harbor is Opana Mobile Radar Station. First contact is made by radio operator Joe Lockhart.
What's this?
Two blips show something out to sea. In 1941, radar technology is still experimental. America doesn't yet realize how important it will become.
If I could reach out and touch you from greater distances, I had a tactical, strategic advantage.
Radar will evolve into a system essential to the modern world. Tracking close to 10 million flights around America and nearly 5 billion passengers around the world every year.
Definitely incoming.
So far, America has kept out of the Second World War.
We had almost our whole fleet in one little harbor, one little area. We were sitting ducks. But then again, we trusted in the Japanese. At the same time, we were having peace talks with them. They even gave us a peace medal.
Operator?
Private Joseph McDonald of the 580th Aircraft Warning Division.
Yeah, this is Opana.
It looks like there are a large
number of planes coming in from the north, 3 points east.
I think everyone's gone off shift. Hold on.
It's early Sunday morning. Japan is nearly 6,500 kilometers from Hawaii. No American expects Pearl Harbor to be attacked. The surprise attack, the speciality of American riflemen during the War of Independence, is now being used against US troops.
We still got planes coming in. It looks like an awful big flight.
Okay.
Lieutenant Kermit Tyler knows there is a flight of American B-17s due in today. He assumes that's what's on the screen.
Well, look, don't worry about it.
What do you think it is, sir?
Nothing.
Radar has been used by the British since 1935, but the US military doesn't yet take it seriously. Only 5 CR-270 mobile radar systems cover the whole of Hawaii, and they're manned only 3 hours a day.
Miles.
Radar also has a weakness. It can't see through Hawaii's mountains. The low-flying Japanese squadron vanishes from the screen. With their shift over, there's nothing more the men can do. MacDonald types up his report.
Bob, take a look at this, will you?
America will pay a high price for neglecting radar.
When did this come in?
At 7:50 a.m., the Japanese attack Pearl Harbor.
Most of the Marines and sailors were still in their rack. They were still asleep. We had no idea that this was going to happen. But we all know that it did.
The Japanese have prepared this attack for a year. They have rehearsed bombing a model of Pearl Harbor in Japan until they reach an 80% hit rate. All 8 US battleships are put out of action. 1,178 Americans are wounded. 2,403 are killed. Private MacDonald's report finally gets read, but by then, it's too late.
A day that will live in infamy. We were completely unprepared for that emotionally, and it turned the country on a dime, overnight. Anti-war people were down, signing up to join the Navy, the Army, and the Marines, whatever was required.
27 hours after the attack, America declares war on Japan. 3 days later, the US is at war with Germany.
It unleashed the wrath of America. And I think it gave us an energy that carried us through the rest of the war.
Once provoked, that massive tiger of engineering was awakened. We had factories that were sitting underutilized in Detroit and around the country because of the Great Depression. We were ready to go on a building spree.
War transforms America as the nation is set to work. Before the war, there were 3 million unemployed. Now the country's huge potential is released.
There was no country that had a deeper economic base and an enormous pool of not just labor, but of scientists and engineers and technologists.
One of their innovations is the Jeep, or GP. the general purpose vehicle. It's made for war, tough, fast, and low to the ground. It's 94 centimeters high. It has a flat hood and a folding windscreen. And its low profile makes it difficult to line up in an enemy's sights. It's small, but can carry up to 7 men. Even the front bumper is a seat. An M1 carbine gun goes just below the windscreen. There's a shovel and an axe to dig yourself out of trouble, and jerry cans of fuel to get you home. If the Jeep flips over, you just lift it out. It only weighs 1,050 kilos, light enough to be put in gliders and dropped behind enemy lines.
What the Jeep symbolized in World War II was not cutting-edge technology, although it was a four-wheel drive vehicle, so it was very capable. But what the Jeep really showed was the power of American manufacturing.
Designed by Bantam and produced by Willis Overland and Ford, by the end of the war, the US makes 3 Jeeps every 4 minutes.
Over the course of the war, we deployed over 600,000 Jeeps. To fly around this open vehicle at top speed was just something every American boy wanted to grow up to do. To this day, I mean, part of the boom in SUVs that we saw was that notion that you want a vehicle that can go anywhere, that can do anything. That's a very American spirit, and it really started with the Jeep.
Jeeps, tanks, and every other weapon of war will be produced in record numbers. But this huge industrial machine is being driven by a new kind of worker. World War II. America sets to work. In this war, mass production will be America's greatest weapon. 88,000 tanks, 7,333 ships, 20 million rifles and small arms, and 40 billion bullets produced in 4 years. 43 million men are registered for combat service. But America needs more manpower.
It was actually the women back in this nation that were the ones working in the factories, that were putting the tanks together, building the ships, building the airplanes, you know, so they are actually the ones that logistically won the war for us.
Women, like Peggy Blakey, a migrant farm worker. Now she works in a munitions factory, joining 2 million other women. The Depression is suddenly over. Her factory used to make fireworks. Now it's pumping out 20mm tracer shells. Tracer shells leave a trail of burning chemicals containing magnesium. They're to self-correct targeting. The pressure's on to make them quickly, but it's high risk. Just combing your hair could kill you. Static electricity and gunpowder equal explosion. But the risk is worth it. Peggy makes real money, $32 a week.
To us, it was just an absolute miracle. Before that, we made nothing. Now we'd have money to buy shoes and a dress and pay rent and get some food on the table.
And she pays taxes. US tax returns jumped from less than 4 million in 1939 to over 42 million in 1945. But World War II will cost the US $300 billion. Twice as much as the federal government had spent since George Washington. Women's salaries set off a wartime consumer boom. 11,000 supermarkets are built. Purchases go up 12%.
the precedent of what women had accomplished in World War II did linger in the memory of the society at large, and I think was one of the things that energized the feminist movement a decade or two later.
In World War II, when women entered the workforce, once they got a taste of that kind of fulfillment that work can give you, there was no going back.
But Peggy's job is dangerous.
I was most worried about the detonators.
Detonators are put into the tip of the shell last. They explode on impact and set off the gunpowder in the shell. Detonators are extremely unstable. The factory is a giant bomb, loaded with tons of explosives. It would only take a spark to set it off.
This terrible thunderstorm came.
Would all staff report to the cafeteria immediately, please?
We were in a hurry to go and somebody knocked the detonators on the floor. We were in the pitch dark. Somebody was screaming, "Don't move, anybody!" I just froze right where I was. I was afraid to step. I was so scared I crawled on my hands and knees. We were in slow motion. Because if we'd stepped on one...
Making weapons can be as dangerous as using them. In the first 16.5 months of the war, 12,000 military men are killed, but 64,000 American workers die in accidents. Another 6 million are injured. Peggy is one of the lucky ones. Having braved the Depression, they now risk their lives for the war.
That was our finest generation in terms of people who would sacrifice and give something of themselves.
US factories build 300,000 aircraft. From bases in Britain, they will be used for high-altitude precision bombing by day, while the British bomb at night. This bold new tactic is first tried on August 17, 1942. Paul Tibbets from Quincy, Illinois, is one of the best pilots of the B-17 bomber, known as the Flying Fortress.
My father thought I was crazy not to be a doctor. He said, if you want to go kill yourself, go ahead.
The planes are cramped, unheated, and unpressurized. Crews suffer claustrophobia, altitude sickness, and frostbite. Of the 111 men on this mission, 31 will be dead or missing by the end of the war. The danger binds the men on every crew together.
You know, if you ask anybody that's ever been in combat, they will tell you, yeah, sure, you fought for your country, you fought for your way of life, you know, but in all reality, you're fighting for your buddy that's right next to you.
The B-17 bomber is built to just keep going. It's got 4 engines, not 2. It can carry 1,800 kilos of bombs, has a range of 3,200 kilometers, and uses 8 50 caliber machine guns to fight off enemy air attacks.
The B-17 bomber, it may not have been the greatest aircraft that was ever created, but it was tough, it was durable, and it found a way to keep going, which is pretty much like an American soldier. You know, tough, durable, and found a way to keep going.
The planes fly high, above 3,000 meters. Crews need an oxygen supply to survive. Tibbet's mission is to bomb the city of Rouen, the Germans' biggest marshalling yard in northern France. Trains supply the German economic and military empire across Europe. Tibbet's mission is to wipe the yard from the map. August 17, 1942. Until now, the Allies had only bombed under cover of night, but to increase the chances of a direct hit, America bombs by day. The aim is accuracy. To achieve it, the crew uses an early computer called the Norden bomb sight. It's top secret. They have orders to destroy it rather than let it fall into enemy hands. Dial in an airspeed, wind direction and altitude.
1 minute to target.
And the machine calculates where to fly and when to drop the bombs. Their objective, destroy the Nazis' economic and industrial base. The railway yards of Rouen help keep the German war machine running.
45 seconds to target.
American casualties are high. In 1943 alone, 2/3 of US air crews never come home. The weather is perfect for the bombing run. Visibility virtually infinite. But at 7,000 meters, B-17s leave vapor trails, arrows in the sky pointing right to the planes.
Okay, it's on.
German anti-aircraft fire explodes under the B-17s. Tibbets must keep his nerve and the plane steady. The computerized bomb sight zeroes in on the target.
Target in sight. Target in sight. Bombs away!
More than 16,700 kilos of bombs hit the railway yard. 50% of the bombs fall onto the target area. In 1942, that is precision bombing, and it's a big improvement over nighttime attacks. This technology will ultimately lead to today's GPS-guided smart bombs. With a precision bombing hit rate up to 95%. Tibbet's mission is a success.
We caught the Germans by surprise. They hadn't expected a daytime attack.
But then shrapnel rips the air. The Germans open up their big guns. 88mm anti-aircraft shells explode around the plane. Tibbets goes into a steep climb, swinging away from the flank. His crew has proved daylight bombing is possible.
A feeling of elation took hold of us as we winged back across the channel. We had braved the enemy in his own skies, and we're alive to tell about it.
All sides bomb industrial targets during the war, and that means collateral damage. It's a grim fact of World War II that sees ordinary families killed in numbers undreamt of in earlier conflicts. Port Tibbets will become famous for another bombing run, but that's 3 years away. He will drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. For every B-17 shot down, American workers produce 2 more. By 1943, 10 million Americans have been drafted. One is 18-year-old Harold Baumgarten, a New Yorker from the Bronx. He'd been offered a trial at Yankee Stadium.
But before I could begin playing for the team, I was drafted. On July 10th, 1943, I entered the U.S. Army.
What they did as 18 or 19-year-old soldiers was far and away of greater significance than anything they ever did in the rest of their lives.
William Dabney convinces his grandmother to let him sign up at the age of 17.
I just wanted to follow my buddies.
During our Revolutionary War, 1/6 of all of George Washington's soldiers were black men. And every time in the course of our first couple of 100 years that we had a conflict and we called upon all citizens, black citizens as well, to serve, blacks stepped forward.
Despite the struggles of war, old prejudices remain. Platoons are segregated.
The Army played a significant role because in many ways the Army was the first place that blacks and whites began to have to stand together and represent the same idea, even though they were in segregated barracks.
World War II changed the entire world, but it certainly transformed the black American psyche in a way that led to and made possible the civil rights movement of the 50s and the 60s.
William Dabney volunteers for the exciting sounding Special Service. But all the training in the world cannot prepare them for the horror that is to come. June 1944, southern England becomes a massive army camp of 3 million Allied troops. Nearly 1.5 million tons of equipment are shipped and flown from America. The goal is to retake Europe from the Germans. General Dwight D. Eisenhower takes command of the biggest amphibious military operation in history, codenamed Operation Overlord. To the world, the Normandy landings are better known as D-Day. Every material factor of war is catered for. The Medical Corps alone stockpiles tens of thousands of tons of medical supplies. Bandages, morphine, surgical instruments, bedpans, oxygen tents and x-ray machines. They have prosthetic limbs and even eyeballs in 5 sizes and 4 colors. By 1944, an American combatant could draw on 3.5 tons of supplies versus a Japanese combatant who had just a kilo.
No one had ever produced so much in such a short time. And this is what really shocked both the Japanese and the Germans.
Blood is so crucial the US develops a system of blood banks on an industrial scale. In the 6 months leading up to D-Day, Americans donate a pint of blood every 2 seconds. The blood is then turned into plasma, so it can be used on the battlefield. It is bottled, put in ice, and packed in cans. Ready for D-Day. June 5th, 1944. American industry has given the Allies the means to retake Europe. Over 5.4 million US soldiers will invade Europe in World War II. 40 times the number of US combat troops that originally invaded Iraq. It's the night before the biggest single amphibious landing the world has ever seen. D-Day. Harold Baumgarten has come a long way since enlisting a year ago.
Many of us had our heads shaved so that our hair could not be grabbed during hand-to-hand combat.
Many of these men have less than 12 hours to live.
I did not expect to come back alive. I wrote such to my sister to get the mail before my parents and break the news gently to them when she received the telegram.
You know, we were brought up on good guys and bad guys. We go back, we talk about our Westerns that way. You know, Hitler was a clear enemy. I think when you have a really clear enemy, you've won the hearts and minds. There was that commitment of sacrifice.
Eve of battle rituals include cutting hair into Mohicans and applying war paint. Dog tags are taped together so they don't rattle. Stealth can make the difference between life and death. One officer tells his men what they can expect.
Look to the right of you. Look to the left of you. There's only going to be one of you left after the first week.
William Dabney now knows what his special service mission is. He has to drag a barrage balloon ashore while under heavy fire. It's a tactic designed to block German aircraft from strafing Allied troops. His chances of survival are slim.
I will return. I will come back to the USA. I'm not looking forward to getting shot and killed. I'm looking forward to going home.
More than 70,000 American troops are about to invade German-held France. Over 1,000 will die on the first day, June 6, 1944, D-Day. Over 5,000 ships and 10,000 aircraft are involved in the first wave alone. 5 beaches will be stormed. The most infamous is codenamed Omaha Beach.
Think about Omaha Beach from the standpoint of the young man. The ramp is about to drop, and the sights and the sounds all around provide the context of hell.
The first troops on Omaha Beach meet ferocious German resistance. Rocket launchers, mortars, and 85 machine gun nests tear into the Americans. There were meant to be 32 tanks with them, but 27 sink. The men are left with virtually no cover on the beach. William Dabney is totally exposed. Tethered to his barrage balloon, he's defenseless. But when it's shot down, he sees his chance. Like every other soldier on Omaha Beach, black or white, Dabney's mission now is to survive.
There wasn't any segregation there.
Harold Baumgarten is thrown straight into the carnage.
So there were men with guts hanging out of their wounds, and body parts lying along our path.
Some men are simply overwhelmed. By 9 a.m., almost 5,000 men are ashore. There are more than 2,000 U.S. casualties on Omaha Beach alone. William Dabney survives. He is later awarded the Legion of Honor. Operation Overlord is a logistical triumph, but the cost is staggering. Nearly 126,000 Americans are killed, wounded, or go missing during the Battle of Normandy. Harold Baumgarten is hit 5 times. After losing blood for over 30 hours, Baumgarten's life is saved by a plasma transfusion, then injections of penicillin and morphine, the very supplies America has mass-produced to keep its men alive. D-Day is key to Hitler's defeat. Within a month, the Allies have landed more than 877,000 troops, 112,000 vehicles, and nearly 520 tons of supplies. US bombing destroys German oil reserves and transportation. American troops lead the drive to Berlin, where they'll meet the advancing Red Army. The Nazis are defeated by Russian and Allied forces. But in the Pacific, American soldiers are still dying, fighting the Japanese Empire. America turns to technology once again. A weapon to end the war. A weapon to change the world. The Alamogordo Desert, New Mexico. July 16, 1945, 5:27 a.m. In 3 minutes, technology will change the world forever. Robert Oppenheimer, the theoretical physicist who loves poetry as much as science. The FBI track his every move, worried that he's a communist. Oppenheimer leads the biggest scientific test in history, the top-secret Manhattan Project. Theoretically, fission physics could enable enormous amounts of explosive energy to be released from a single device, the atomic bomb. The bomb is the most advanced weapon in the world, but nobody is sure whether it will work.
Even many of the people who worked on the bomb itself were skeptical that the bomb would actually work. No one had ever done anything like this.
During the war, bombing has escalated enormously. Whole cities of civilians are now being hit. The US military hopes a single bomb can destroy an entire city.
wreaking that kind of mass destruction. That was something new in the history of warfare. The atomic bombs put an emphatic punctuation to that decision, but the decision was way before August of 1945.
If this test works, the terrifying power of the atomic bomb will be unleashed on Japan. The enemy will have no choice but unconditional surrender. Deputy Commanding General of the Manhattan Project, Thomas Farrell, watches Oppenheimer.
Dr. Oppenheimer grew tenser as the last seconds ticked off. He scarcely breathed. He stared directly ahead.
11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The temperature generated at the center of the explosion is 10,000 times greater than the surface of the sun. The heat turns the desert sand to glass. The explosion is more massive than even Oppenheimer expects.
When it went off in the New Mexico dawn, that first atomic bomb, we thought of Alfred Nobel and his hope, his vain hope that dynamite would put an end to wars.
Even the scientists themselves recognized the gravity of that moment. And of course, Oppenheimer famously said, "I become death, the destroyer of worlds," quoting the Bhagavad Gita, and recognizing that man had really reached a turning point where the power available to us was almost limitless.
When atomic bombs are dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, an estimated 120,000 people die instantly. Over the days, months, and years that follow, up to 80,000 more slowly die. A day after the second bomb is dropped, the Japanese surrender. America defeats Japan, but at a terrible price. Having survived the Depression and World War II, the greatest generation comes home.
They'd been through it all, and they wanted one thing. They wanted a better life for their families than they'd had. And that's what they dedicated themselves to.
America's distance from battle leaves its infrastructure intact and its economy vibrant. It produces twice as much oil as the rest of the world combined. It has half the world's manufacturing capacity and 2/3 of its gold stocks.
And they had no real competition in the world because Europe was devastated, Asia was devastated, and America could be the colossus that it became.
World War II transforms the USA. In only 4 years, Americans make twice as much money as they did before the war. They have 50 million babies in 15 years. There are 20 million new jobs in 25 years. America has become a superpower.